The power of the human person is this real idea of like that we can be intentional about our actions and our decisions. And so how we spend our day, what we do with our life, how we prioritize our time, whether it be, and that it matters, I guess. And like,
hey guys, this is Elijah Vargas from the Goal Soul Podcast. Can you introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Father Krall. I am a Jesuit here at Creighton University, and proud to be with you tonight.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you getting on my podcast to speak. Obviously, I sent you an email, and you expressed that you were very interested and excited to get on. So I'm happy to get right into this. Have you ever been on a podcast before, I want to ask?
Actually, yeah. There's a couple Jesuits who have done these, and then some other friends that I know back. I was in Milwaukee before this, and they had me much more like theological aspects, but so a couple others.
Yeah, I'm hoping we could definitely dive into some theology in this podcast and some questions about like religion and Christianity, you know?
Great.
So aside from the podcasts that you've been on or other Jesuits have been on, what podcasts have you listened to?
I like Jordan Peterson.
Oh, yeah, me too.
Yeah, he's a good one. He gets you thinking. I have this other one that I enjoy it was called The Golden Hour. Basically, these two neuroscientists talking about how to focus with your mind in terms of work, play, study, performance. And so they kind of do like performance kind of aspects. But it's, The Golden Hour is one of the main ones.
That's really cool. For me, I also like, so I would listen to Jordan Peterson occasionally because I like the way that he talks. He doesn't talk like any regular person, you know what I mean?
His mind is running so fast.
Yeah.
Almost he has to catch up to himself.
It's crazy.
And just like follow him sometimes almost can be, you have to listen to it in slow motion, but deep ideas. And some of the people that he brings on too are very interesting.
Yeah, of course.
He was just in town
really?
weeks ago. He filled the CHI Center, actually.
That's wild.
So it was neat to go actually hear him live.
That's really cool. So you actually went?
I did, yeah. There were some other students here who were very interested, and they thought I would be interested too, so we all went together.
Yeah, that's cool. That's really cool. I like how you're able to keep like a really cool relationships with some of the students. Like one of my friends had you previously, and he highly recommended you.
Hey.
I don't know if you know Miguel. Shout out Miguel.
Hey,
but,
yeah. I do know him. Wonderful. Well, I hope he's doing well. I haven't seen him in a while.
Yeah, of course. Tonight we're actually going to watch UFC 300. I don't know if you're paying attention to that.
I'm the biggest UFC guy.
Yeah, it's very violent, but it's a fun watch, I swear.
Wow. Do you actually get into this?
Yeah. We try to watch like every
I was saying
every
more like
big one.
Practice kind of stuff like that. Or do you
I do too.
Do you really?
Yeah.
Oh my.
Me and my friend Logan. Logan actually has gotten a few fights. Not in the UFC, obviously, but some like amateur stuff, and he's been doing pretty good. He's 2-0 right now.
Wow.
Yeah.
Keep healthy. I don't know. Seeing how violent that gets.
Yeah.
Wow. So it's a big fight tonight, you're saying?
Yeah, it's huge. This one's got multiple champions or previous champions, and they're all gonna go at it.
Wow. Where do they actually do these?
All over the world, really. Like a few months ago, they had one in like Dubai, and then this one, I'm not sure where it is. It's probably in like New York or somewhere. But
have you actually seen it live at all?
What was that?
Have you ever gone to see it live?
No. No. That would be awesome, but it's probably way too expensive.
Oh gosh, and it just seems like even the ambiance of the crowds there just seems to be almost violent and crazy.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree. Moving a bit away from that, it's a little. I kind of want to go, as many of you know, watching this podcast, I like to talk about the person's background or their history, where they grew up, and all of that information. So you guys get to get a good feeling of who this person is. So where did you grow up?
Well, as a Jesuit and then as a military family, it's tough to answer that question. So
Okay.
I've been in many places in many different parts of my life. So my dad was in the Air Force. He was doing more medical school through the Air Force. So I was born in an Air Force base out in California. But then we spent some time in Colorado because he was just working at the academy in Colorado Springs. But then I spent a good amount of time in central Wisconsin. I still have family in like the Milwaukee area, and like the Wisconsin area is kind of my hometown of sorts. And so I still see Wisconsin as a root. But then I did my undergrad out at Boston College. By the way, they're playing for the Frozen Four championship tonight, so
Oh, really?
I'll be watching my Golden Eagles. Very good at hockey. And then, then after that is when I entered the Jesuits. So I went from Boston College to St. Paul, Minnesota, where there's the first 2 years of the Jesuits called the Novitiate in St. Paul. And actually that's where the Frozen Four championship was taking place at the Excel Center in downtown St. Paul. Obviously, Minnesota's a big hockey area.
Yeah.
And then after that, I went to study at the University of Toronto, up in Canada. So I did this whole master's of the history and philosophy of science and technology. After that, I was teaching at Marquette High School back in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. So Milwaukee's been kind of a home base back and forth. And then I went back to Boston College for more theological education. There's all these different degrees, so I can get like MDiv, STL, THM. Back at Boston College. So I spent a good amount of my life in Boston, around Boston. And then went back to Milwaukee. I was ordained a priest, and then was in Milwaukee as an associate pastor at this big Jesuit church. Spent then a year in Oxford doing another degree, Oxford, England. That was a lot of fun. Playing in Harry Potter land, getting all around England, spent some time in Scotland. And then came back to Milwaukee where I did my Ph.D. at Marquette University.
Wow.
Before coming here now in Omaha, Nebraska.
That's you were all over the U.S.
everywhere.
and even in England, and
it's an exciting life. It was
wow.
Seeing the world.
Yeah, that's really cool. I want to take a few steps back because I want to briefly go over your childhood. And then work my way up until why you decided to become a Jesuit.
Okay.
So can we, how would you describe your childhood?
It was happy. It was wonderful. Very joyful. I had good friends. Wonderful family. I loved playing sports. But yeah, I was growing up in kind of a small town, Wisconsin. But my father was a doctor, and because there's a big medical facility, it's not just necessarily the most super small town. I mean, it's big enough to have a big hospital. There's actually a Walmart. It's not on the map.
Yeah.
But then we went to school with a lot of other great classmates. But kind of a graduating class of about 30 kids. So
oh wow!
From first grade to 12th grade, the same 30 kids. Pretty much dated everybody over those 12 years, and then it's you graduate and have a nice life and you never see them again, which isn't completely true. I still have about a good handful of those friends that I still stay in touch with. But yeah, it was a great life. Played a lot of sports. My main ones were soccer and tennis. Even when I was graduating from high school, I was kind of looking into possibly playing collegiate level tennis. But it was more do I want to study or do I want to be an athlete? And I still stayed in shape when I went out to Boston College for my undergrad. But I did not end up playing any club varsity sports.
Yeah.
Club sports, not varsity sports. So yeah, I mean it was a happy life. Worked hard, played hard, had a great family. We traveled a lot, even as a family. So it was all good memories.
That's really cool. So you said previously that you were in a military family. Mm-hmm. And you also said that your father was a doctor.
Yeah.
So where did the military aspect come into play?
So yeah, my father did. He came from pretty much a poor family, so he knew he wanted to go to medical school and make a difference in the world and care for people, but he knew he couldn't afford it, so he was able to get this Air Force scholarship to pay for his medical school. And so yeah, he went to the Medical College of Wisconsin, got a great degree, but then had to serve his time. But he ended up going out to Yale in New Haven, Connecticut for his residency program. And then his first assignment was out in California for the Air Force.
Wow.
So it was a great gig. I mean, he enjoyed it. He was able to meet a lot of new people, have a lot of new experiences, and then come out of medical school pretty much debt-free.
Wow.
So it was...
That's amazing.
Yeah. And so in some ways, and then just for me, it was just having that sense of the base mentality that the military is not just a bunch of like super high disciplined people, but just very good people who want to self-sacrificing, self-transcendent, want to serve, want to care for people, and that there's this real kind of tight-knit bond when you get onto a base that always kind of attracted me from that young age.
Does that mean that you were considering joining one of those branches?
No, I actually am. So I'm a Navy chaplain right now. So I'm a reserve naval chaplain.
You are doing everything, I swear.
Kind of a side gig, but yeah. So yeah, that was definitely some of the motivation for me to actually keep. So the military chaplaincy. So I'm a Jesuit. I'm a priest. I'm a teacher, but then I have this, like, I'm a military chaplain. They kind of call it like a call within a call. So it's like I'm a priest, but then you got to get this military chaplaincy going too.
Interesting.
So yeah, but so I'm naval. So in some ways I jumped from the Air Force idea into the Navy. But as a naval chaplain, I have this opportunity to serve both in the Coast Guard and the Marines or the Navy. And so in some ways a naval chaplain can wear 3 different hats almost simultaneously.
Wow.
So it's a good gig. In some ways, I don't know if you ever seen. Well, they just made the new Top Gun movie.
Oh yeah,
so
I saw it.
That was a Maverick, but I grew up with, like, the original one, like the 1980s. Yeah. And so that's like I grew up watching Top Gun. It's like I want to be a fighter pilot someday. And so this is like the closest thing that I can do it for now.
Yeah.
So still that Navy fighter pilot. It's still a dream for me to, like, at least sit in the cockpit or, like, be in the background or the navigator for a fighter pilot someday.
Yeah, those are, especially like Top Gun Maverick, or like, because that's the one that I saw. Yeah. I haven't gotten the
original one's kind of cool.
Yeah, I haven't gotten a chance.
I was pretty impressed with the way that the sequel kind of, like, picked up elements from the first one. And it's one of the best kind of sequels that I've seen in a while.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of sequels, like, don't really do the first one justice, but I feel like, I mean, I hadn't seen the first one, but I'd say that the second one's pretty good.
It is a good story.
I did like it. Okay, so moving out of, like, high school, I wanted to ask, what made you decide to become a Jesuit? Because you kind of explained what moved you into wanting to, like, join the military and become a naval, you said chaplain?
Mm-hmm.
So what made you decide to become a Jesuit?
Well, I guess my father and I are very close, and so my father grew up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and then he went to, like, a seminary high school, actually, and so he was thinking about the priesthood even in his young age, and he went through that high school and was, like, being taught by all these other priests, and he ended up then going to Marquette University, met my mother, and things went different from him for that. But that sense of the priesthood, or at least the strong, faithful environment, was always important to me and my family, and my dad kind of instilled in our family just this deep faith. It's like every Sunday we would go to church as a family. Before every meal we would pray together. I went to Catholic schools my entire life. And so there's something about that, I think, like, planted a seed within me. But also, my life is a sequence of, like, key insight moments, or kind of these aha epiphanies. And so I still remember in this small town in Wisconsin coming out of an all-school mass in this small elementary school with these 30 other classmates that I had. And there's just something that clicked in me that said, it's like, I want to be a priest when I grow up, and I want to do what that guy on the altar does. And I became this priest who was at my small town parish, became quite a mentor for me. And I was able to start serving the Mass, the Catholic Mass, as an altar server, starting in, like, 2nd grade, and then worked through all of high school, doing all these confirmations, got to know this bishop that would come for different confirmations or the big celebrations of the Masses. And so it's like I just kind of grew up in this milieu of sorts of a strong faith and seeing amazing people doing this. But then there's something, the second key insight moment came when I was a sophomore in high school. I still remember this vividly. I was out on a bike ride going through, like, kind of these small country roads, and there was something in the way the wind was kind of blowing over the trees, over this water, and then hitting me. And I came back from this bike ride and had this insight of, I want to major in physics and philosophy when I go to college, because I want to figure out, like, the way the world works and how it all fits together, kind of this great harmony. And so, this insight, sophomore year in high school, I was going to major in physics and philosophy already, like, when I go to college. I didn't even know what college I was going to go to. But then it was just kind of this conflict. Well, how does this priesthood thing that I had from 1st grade now work with this idea of like doing research and studying physics and philosophy that I had now in high school. And will it ever happen where I could do both of these together? And then there's kind of this third aspect that started to come into it. I started to play tennis a lot, and so we'd compete against like this other big high school, the other Catholic big high school in the state, which was Marquette University High School, which is kind of the big kids from the big city in Milwaukee, and we were kind of the farm boys up in the north part of Wisconsin. And we would play these guys, and they would just like blow us out of the water. It was like these kids were like far superior in the competition they face on a normal basis compared to what we faced. But it was something about the way they played, the way they had this teamwork and camaraderie as like kind of true fraternity, as like this brotherhood of teammates on this tennis team that like captured my attention. It's like, what are those Jesuits? There's a Jesuit prep high school, Marquette High, and it's like, what do those Jesuits have that allows that to happen? I saw something. I want what they have. And so it was like the three of these things came together, this urge of a priesthood, this sense of studying physics, philosophy, and this real sense of strong brotherhood. And when I started to think about it, I had this inquiry. I made this inquiry for the Jesuits. It's like, what does it mean to be a Jesuit if I were to grow up or and to seek to join the Jesuits? And I sent this postcard, and this vocation director, this kind of priest as a Jesuit from the Wisconsin area, got this postcard that I sent in, and before I knew it, I'm getting bombarded with books and all sorts of things about the Jesuits, and I get invited to these different retreats. They call them come and see retreats. So just you come and see, you get to meet these different Jesuits, you hear about their life. I started talking with them and hearing their story, sharing my story about these different insights. And so this idea of physics, philosophy, and going off to think about the priesthood was kind of stirring within me. And so then I was graduating from high school and looking at different colleges and can I keep all these desires going? And what about these Jesuits? And could I go to a Jesuit college then too? And both of my parents had gone to Marquette University, which is the big university, then the Jesuit school in Wisconsin. But as I was applying to Marquette, and they definitely favored to me, it was like you could stay close to home, we have family in the area. But as I'm applying to Marquette, they dropped their physics department. It's like, well, I can't major in physics if I go to Marquette. And I don't know why they would drop a whole department. It was very odd.
Yeah.
So then I started looking elsewhere. It's like it was clear as day. I guess I can't go to Marquette because I couldn't study physics, and I had this somehow I had this inspiration to study physics. So that's where, long story short, I ended up at Boston College, and they had a physics department, and they had a philosophy department, and it was from there that I just started meeting all these different Jesuits who were teachers there, or doing research, or different administrators, and each of the summers between my years, so I did a different kind of, they call it a Jesuit experiment of sorts. So after my freshman year as a freshman at Boston College, I went off to South Dakota, where I was working with the Lakota Sioux people in South Dakota. I was cutting grass at this Jesuit mission that's been out there since the 1800s. Just meeting these Jesuits and working with some of the poorest of the poor people in the country, around Wounded Knee and White Clay, South Dakota, some very poor area. And suicide rates are high, and drug abuse and alcohol abuse is very high. But the Jesuits have been out there working with these people. There's a school out there, and so it was very powerful work, and getting to see this kind of work, and then seeing and meeting these Jesuits who have been doing this ministry and caring for and with these people, the Lakota Sioux. After my sophomore year, I always had this dream to go to Rome, and so I was able to study with these Jesuits in Rome. Gonzaga University have this study abroad program. I'm staying in Florence, actually living and studying in Florence, been traveling to Rome and all over Italy for my whole summer after my sophomore year. That was a blast. Just again, meeting Jesuits there. And then my physics was growing, and so after my junior year, I was able to meet these Jesuits who work with they work for the Vatican Observatory.
Oh,
and
wow.
So they are astrophysicists and Jesuit priests doing this cutting-edge research. And so I was able to meet this Jesuit and get involved in one of his projects. We were studying these galaxies, these particular galaxies that have elliptical shape, but have these, so it's kind of more of a ball shape. It's a very old galaxy that's already starting to break up. So as opposed to the Milky Way kind of hurricane shape, it's kind of disputes. It's kind of has become dispersed in its gravitational pull, so it's more like a ball. But somehow it still has inside of it some of these they call it these dust lanes of sorts, and so it's these the speculation that the older galaxy rammed into a younger galaxy, and so that it has kind of a both and feature. So we're able to find all these different galaxies across the universe and study those particular ones and take these pictures with this amazing telescope, and then do all this like research behind them. So that's what I did my junior year, again with this other Jesuit. So it was like all these different Jesuits that I met, from like the Marquette High kids that blew us out in tennis, to these Jesuits working with the poorest of the poor in South Dakota, to these Jesuits who are doing this astrophysics and cutting edge research. And it was like, it became very exciting to me, and like this real sense of that brotherhood was there. And it's like, I gotta at least try this out and see what this life would be like. It's like they're doing all these cool things, and every time I'm looking for something to do with my summers or free time, it's like I look to the Jesuits, and it's like they always provided me with above and beyond what the adventure that I could have thought about myself.
That's really cool. That must have been really inspiring, honestly, to see like.
It was great.
Yeah. So you kind of explained this a little bit, or I know that you kind of explained it like in class about like the process of becoming a Jesuit and how you have to go on a journey.
Yeah.
Is that correct? And can you kind of explain that?
Sure. So so after I graduated from Boston College, I ended up doing what's known as the El Camino de Santiago de Compostela, this pilgrimage across Spain. So it was the day of my graduation, I was on a plane to Spain, and my roommate and I walked this like 500 miles across Spain.
Wow.
And then later that summer, I entered the Jesuits, and it was called the novitiate. So it's like the first 2 years of the Jesuit formational process. And during this time, they kind of like the Marines, they kind of break you down to build you up. They put you through all these different experiments of sorts. It's kind of like, what does it mean to live the Jesuit life? It's kind of this very cloistered. You lose all kind of, not that I had a cell phone even at that point, but it's like any kind of connections or technology or connection to the outside world. You just kind of had this more prayerful focus and community life. But yeah, all these different experiments, one of which was like called the 30-day silent retreat, known as the spiritual exercises, or 30 days of silence. Another thing with like the hospital experiments, I was working with these like mentally handicapped people outside of Clinton, Iowa, at this L'Arche community. Another experiment was I actually worked for the Archdiocese, the military, like traveling around the country giving retreats to military personnel. So that's again where kind of the military tapped into it. But one of the other experiments is called the pilgrimage, where they give you like $30 and send you out for a month. And you just kind of rely on the grace of God and the goodwill of others. And so, yeah, it was kind of an adventurous month. Some guys get like a one-way bus ticket and the $30. I was able to ask for a bike. And so I ended up leaving St. Paul, Minnesota, and followed the Mississippi River into Iowa, then Iowa through Nebraska, actually biked from the Twin Cities here to Omaha, and then Omaha up into the South Dakota and the reservations out there, and then headed east. It's kind of like a small loop through the whole Midwest every day, kind of
that's still
doing about
like
70
crazy.
miles or so. Every day, met like other like friendly families, good people who kind of took me in their house, cooked me a warm meal, and like gave me some more strength to keep on going.
Yeah, and people in the Midwest are like way nicer.
Yes. So there were definitely guys who like went out to the East Coast or like in New York City and like trying to knock on doors.
No.
They spent a lot of nights on like park benches and things.
Oh.
Meanwhile, I had there was times like I had a whole house to myself.
Yeah, that's crazy.
I had some very generous people.
Wow. So now that you've become a Jesuit and you've went through that whole process, what made you decide to come to Creighton?
Well, as a Jesuit, it's more this sense of a obedience. I kind of go where I'm sent. So the Jesuits, kind of in the whole realm of the church, the Jesuits are kind of like a special forces unit in the military, where like if the diocesan guys, so it's like the Omaha diocese, the guys would enter this like the seminary and specifically be under the bishop of the Omaha diocese. They'll spend their whole life in and around Omaha and going kind of from parish to parish. But as a Jesuit, it's more like we are sent on these like special missions like around the world. So we're not like tied down to one specific geographical area.
Yeah.
And the other thing about the Jesuits is like one of our big fortes, or like that what we really highlight is what makes us so strong as Jesuits is this vow of obedience to our superiors. So basically I go where I'm sent. And there was kind of this need here in Omaha at Creighton University for a teacher. And the fact that Omaha University has a good medical school and a solid theology department and just like these great like liberal art Jesuit education, there was this kind of need to keep the Jesuit population here strong. And the fact that I was like, I kind of skipped some steps between my physics philosophy undergrad, and I was able to get a Ph.D. in neuroscience and theology. So it was the idea of still that mix of the science and theology, and so that it melded well with the medical school here at Creighton, along with the strong theology. And so they're letting me do what I want to do here, study now, like as opposed to galaxies, more like the human person fully alive. So I guess my research has kind of emerged and evolved through the last couple of years too, but still always keeping this kind of science and religion. And I guess even just this past weekend here at Creighton, I was able to host this big science and religion conference and we're really trying to build that up to this kind of melding of the sciences and the religions, or at least the dialectic or dialogue between science and religion. And Creighton really is backing kind of my research and supporting me here. So it's worked out. I mean, I guess in some ways I came because of a sense of obedience, where the superior just says, listen, when you get Jesuits at Creighton, can you go there? I was like, okay, yes, sir. Like, if you ask me to jump, how high should I jump? You know, so that kind of thing. But he asked me to come here, and so I did, and it's like diving in with both feet.
Okay, and it seems like you really like it here, too. So.
It's a good place, and there's great students here.
Yeah, of course.
Top-notch students.
That's awesome. So can you kind of like describe what a day in the life of a Jesuit at Creighton is like?
It's crazy. I think in some ways there's a lot of jokes about Jesuits. Like how do you describe three Jesuits? Like, well, they're three different Jesuits, and so the day in the life of every Jesuit is somewhat unique and different.
Interesting.
But in some ways, for me, like I'm a person. I guess maybe the military mentality is still within me. That it's kind of a body, mind, soul development, and every day try to like better yesterday's best. And so people have talked about seeing me get doing my early morning run.
I've seen that.
Doing the hills and different things. So yeah, running about campus, but usually head to the river or head up the hills if I head west. And so I get a good run in, try to get a good workout in the morning. It just refreshes me, clears my mind, gets me set for the day. But then spend some time in prayer. We'll always have like celebration of the Mass. There's kind of this obligation that priests do. It's called the Liturgy of the Hours. And so like for these different times of the day to come back to like these Psalms and Psalmody. So a sense of like mindfulness, focusing, but connecting to God. And so it's like having the strength of body, awakening the soul, and then my true mission here is like to teach and to study and to do research. And then so yeah, once kind of the mind and soul the body and soul are set, well then I can get into the mind and to exercise the mind. So yeah, I love teaching. Got a lot of grading to do here, some papers to catch up on.
Yeah.
But then yeah, that's get into different research projects and different conferences or my publications. I'm working on some book publications and things. So
oh wow!
Every day, try to like.
Can you reveal what those are about? Or
well, sure. And in some ways, it's not too much. And like, so my dissertation that I did during my Ph.D. was looking at like the transformational effects of prayer practices on the brain. And so
oh wow!
Why have people prayed for the last 6,000 years or 2,000 years at least in Christian theology? And so it's like, why have like families pass down prayer from generation to generation? Why do people still see the Bible as something of a comfort? Why do people go to Mass and liturgy? And so for the first time in history, we have all this technology, from radio stuff and filming to actually like imaging the brain, seeing how the brain is in action. And so yeah, so now we can start researching like what happens when people pray. And what is the brain and the physiological aspects of the body actually changing when people enter into these like intentional, disciplined practices, meditation, contemplation aspect. And so my dissertation is kind of looking at that, and now it's like I'm trying to get the research that I was doing like out and like kind of doing some of these advocacy in terms of like the preservation of like the wholeness of the human person, as opposed to kind of like reducing us down to simply like a synapse, saying like, oh, here's the God synapse, or here's the particular gene that makes us, like the genetic code that makes us religious or not religious or not. It's like, is there actually some more like holistic understanding about what love is or what connects us as human persons, and it's not just one particular synapse or one fiber within us, but the wholeness of who we are as we're saying, like body, mind, and soul.
That's actually really, really interesting. I never thought about like the effects of it like that.
Yeah, so it's like
really
otherwise cool. It's like we're just doing this for like because it's like some ritual or like we have to do it or like we just kind of get into some habit or something. But one of the most basic elements of the Jesuit spirituality is, which we've been doing in class, is known as spiritual exercises.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, as I said, like I like myself to do physical exercises, and I see the effects of it in terms of just like a sense of endurance, like a slower heart rate, greater appetite, just stronger muscles, able to have strength, able to run faster, lift more. And so this physical exercises have these effects on us. And so in the same way, do spiritual exercises have also effects, and also in physiological, so like even like neuroscience, of like actually looking at the changes in the physical brain. But then it's like there's this, what is soul? What do we mean by soul or spirit or like our heart? Like I feel it in my heart. So what does that mean? And so it's like that when we do these spiritual exercises, just like there's physical exercises, will there be changes in our body, mind, and soul when we pray or meditate or contemplate?
Wow.
That's what I like studying. And
okay, I understand it now. That's actually
like,
really crazy.
What does it mean to be a person that's like fully alive? And it's like that integration of like the mind and the soul and the body all coming together.
Yeah. Wow. Okay.
So stay tuned. Yeah, this book is coming out hopefully soon.
Yeah, you guys better read it. Okay, so now that we're through what it's like being a Jesuit here at Creighton, and then we got a little bit about your publication, which I honestly think is really cool. That's really cool stuff you're about to write about, and you already wrote about. So what? This is a question from my roommate.
Okay.
What sets you apart from like a Catholic priest?
That is a good question, kind of a common question that we get a lot. In some ways, I am a Catholic priest, so I am a Roman Catholic person in general. And as a priest, but it's in some ways going back to that idea of like that. There's many different, like the military. There's the Air Force, there's the Army, there's the Navy, and even within the Navy, there's like the Marines, and then within the Marines, there's like the Navy, there's like the Navy SEALs, and so like all these like different divisions or sorts within like the hierarchy of the military.
Yeah.
Well, it's the same way for like when people say like Roman Catholic Church, it's like, well, it's a huge kind of umbrella term for a lot of different like branches, and so I guess even in class we've been doing different things like, well, there's like the Augustinian order, and they go back to the order of like this founder of St. Augustine, or the Dominicans, or the Franciscans. And so there's all these different like groups, and they all have these different like charisms, but they're all Catholic. And by Catholic, it simply means universal. And the idea of even within Catholic, there's like Greek Orthodox and all these other kind of rites of sorts. But so even like the Roman rite of the Catholic order, all under the ultimate umbrella of like Christianity. So it's like there's all these kind of a different like, not like, I don't want to say divisions, because we like to think of it much more of a unified force, but there's like these components or charisms that like celebrate the Christianity in its uniquenesses or amazing diversities. And so, and I guess one of the other key elements of like the priesthood specifically, so you can have Augustinian priests, Dominican priests, Franciscan priests, and then diocesan priests too. And so the diocesan is like, it's like you kind of give your life and you want to serve the people of Omaha, Nebraska, and Omaha alone. Or I want to serve the poor with the Franciscans, and so they're like kind of doing all this different charism for especially the poor and marginalized. The Jesuits really get into especially like educational purposes. So like, and we do these like missions around the world. So we take a special fourth vow of special obedience to the Pope. So the Pope came to us right now and says, listen, we need to start some schools in China. Do you have any Jesuits who could like learn Chinese and like your Mandarin and like head off into China and like start these schools, learn their language, get into it, and like start to spread the Roman Catholic faith in China? I'm like, sure, yeah, that's what we got. We got some people who've been studying this. Let's go. or come to Omaha, Nebraska, where there's like fewer Jesuits, or like not enough people, or who are versatile with the medical sciences as well as the theology, and as well as like the there's a lot of PT, OT, or all these like physical exercise science kind of majors and sorts. And so, as I said, I get into body, mind, soul, a human person fully alive. Can you send a guy who could do a mission here? And so, yeah, but still then celebrate the Mass at St. John's Church here in Omaha, or like do the sacraments and do confessions and things. So a Roman Catholic priest, but with this charism of the Jesuits, and able to then do the research and kind of what the Jesuits are all about. So St. Ignatius back in the 1500s kind of had this whole idea that as opposed to calling us like the Ignatians, he said, well, we want to be companions or a strong brotherhood that are just like friends of Jesus Christ. And so that's what we're going to name ourselves. We're going to call ourselves like the company of Jesus, or the society of Jesus, and so as opposed to like under one particular name, like the Dominicans under St. Dominic. We're the Jesuits, and then the Jesuits kind of a nickname for the Society of Jesus. And as a society, we have these charisms of, especially education, retreat works, sharing the spiritual exercises, and then a real sense of discernment of spirits, of how we come to know and live our best lives.
Wow. Yeah, that's really crazy. I never thought about it. I like how you call it like a special forces, or you kind of apply it to like a military kind of standpoint. Because now I'm picturing like the Pope is kind of like the presidential power, like the commandant, you know. And then you got
and then we actually have branches. What's known, actually just 2 days ago, we had the Superior General, or the top dog of the Society of Jesus, and he lives in Rome most days, but he actually flew to Omaha, Nebraska 2 days ago to meet with us. And so, but he's literally known as the Superior General.
Yeah.
And so very, again, militaristic.
So that would be, like I said, that'd be kind of like the commandant kind of person, whereas like the president would be kind of like the Pope.
That's right.
Wow.
So it's in some ways that's how
crazy.
I connected to it too, because I had my military kind of family upbringing, and so it's like, oh, I know how this works. It's like, it's all a sense of hierarchy.
It's very, very similar. That's really cool. I did a trip to Washington D.C. my sophomore year.
Fun city.
After my sophomore year, and we got to study like national security as like I forgot what it was called, like NSLC. It's like this national student leadership conference where a bunch of students just get together and we choose a program. We chose like national security, and we'd sit down and like listen to like the FBI speak, or the CIA, NSA. And one of the people that came in was the commandant, and I was like, whoa, like I had never like thought I'd be in the same room.
Yeah,
you know, it's really crazy.
High-ranking officials. Yeah. And what they've seen, the experiences they've had.
Yeah, and I remember coming back home, and my friends were like, "You saw the commandant?" I was like, "Yeah, I saw the commandant." That was pretty crazy. So, what would you say is like your favorite part about being a Jesuit?
Some of I like the diversity of just, one of the jokes is like join the Jesuits and see the world.
Yeah.
Which has almost become true for me.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like I was able to study in England, go to Scotland, get to Rome, now be a part of the military, and I'm actually assigned to what's known as the 3rd Marine Division, and they're like located in Okinawa. And so I haven't gone there yet, but we'll see if that's going to come up in the foreseeable future. But that sense of, the absolute diversity of the ministries that we can do, of like spiritual direction, spiritual exercise work, working with like top-notch athletes, to doing the sacraments, to doing military work, to teaching these great classes that I have the privilege of teaching. And so just this, to be with like, I guess I've always had this kind of dream of like, to be with the best of the best and work to make them even better. And so it's like to have the best of the best students here at Creighton University, and like then to, how can we come to even more fullness of life itself, or like how to guide you guys to be like who you are called to be, or what all your talents and gifts are, so for the greater glory of God, or to go out into the world to make a difference.
Yeah.
And to have just that privilege of working with you like that.
I think that's awesome. Yeah. That really is.
In some ways, like it's a life coach. It's a lot of people get into that kind of thing, and different names for it, but it's like that idea of still coming back that I guess I see personally, like that idea of my body, mind, and soul. But how can I share this with others too?
Yeah. No, yeah. I can definitely identify. I think that's really cool. Like being able to go around, experience like people with all different backgrounds, and then teach them like what you know and like your experiences and all that. I think I can't say I do like similar things, but like with this podcast, I'm able to do like talk to different people with different experiences, get to know like how they think and their experiences and stuff like that. So I think that's like.
Oh, you got a message here.
Yeah.
You're sharing it, so that's a gift.
Yeah.
And yeah, you bring it together. Remind me of your major, or like.
I'm a criminal justice major.
Oh, so that's why this whole NLC, National Leadership Conference, kind of was such a good thing for you.
That honestly, that is what made me decide to go that route. Because before that, I really had no idea what I was doing.
I need to connect you to this student that I'm working with. He's a senior. He's a good chance he's going to graduate from here and then join either the FBI or CIA.
That'd be really cool.
So he's been doing kind of like this whole development, or he's going to get this whole master's degree in like criminal justice before joining the CIA.
Yeah.
So if you want to meet with this guy, he's got a lot of neat connections.
Yeah. I might interview him.
Okay, that's true. He's very interesting, actually.
That'd be really cool.
I'll give you his name.
Okay. Okay, now I want to get into some random, hopefully, these are some random questions. Hopefully you get like some good conversation going. I might throw in a little like lighthearted questions, maybe some humor, but probably towards the end or towards the. We'll see how this goes, right?
Let's see it. Yeah.
I want to ask, what is your? I have 5 on here, but I don't know if I want to do 5. Let's do 3. What's like your top 3 Jesuits, like, of all time?
Oh wow.
Like throughout history, which Jesuits do you think would be like the ones that you kind of look up to, aspire to be like? Like what's your Mount Rushmore?
Definitely one is Edmund Campion. He was in the 1600s in England when like the severe Catholic persecution was happening by like there was like this division in the Christian church between like the Anglicans and the Protestants and versus the Roman Catholics. And these Jesuits were coming in from France to kind of like re-evangelize or care for all these Catholics who were still in England. But they knew they were probably going to be arrested quickly and tortured severely once they were arrested. And so these Jesuits kind of came in like undercover, so literally like FBI spies and like infiltration. And they got to meet these different Catholic families around the British countryside. And the families had and developed in their houses, they called it priest holes, or kind of these like walls or like holes in the wall that like if they saw like the Anglican like police forces or army coming in, they could like smuggle or like hide the priests that were like kind of ministering to them into these like holes in the wall.
That's crazy.
And so Edmund Campion did this for many years until there was like somehow word got out or something that was like he was in this particular house. He got arrested and was taken to the Tower of London and pretty much starved and put on the rack on like a normal basis, like hung, drawn, and like kind of stretched out. Well, even in that, he would be like put up into these like debates against like some of the top Anglicans in the English like Parliament.
Yeah.
And apparently, like he was such a smart guy. He went to Oxford beforehand. He was such a smart guy that he would just like rip these people apart in these like logical debates.
Wow.
He's also known as like to write what's known as Campion's Brag, which is kind of like it's a long, this like kind of national anthem of the Jesuits or the Roman Catholic rites, or just like what it means to follow Jesus Christ in the world today. And he uses like all these like powerful images, and like I still remember a little bit of the end of it. It's like the expense has been reckoned, the enterprise has begun. It is of God, it cannot be withstood. So let it happen, so let it be done. And this real sense of like that, and he like proclaimed this like just before he was going to be hung, drawn, and quartered in this the Tower of London.
Yeah.
And it was just like this kind of stick it to the man. It was like, you will not hold back my faith. The faith and the zeal I have for proclaiming Jesus Christ to the world. And so
that's amazing.
Edmund Campion, he's got this whole book. This Evelyn Waugh is this great British writer, but he wrote this like biography of Edmund Campion. That's like one of the best books I've ever read. And just like I recommend it to as many people as I can. Yeah. So Edmund Campion is definitely
up there.
Yeah.
And then, what would you say is like your other 2?
Well,
no particular order.
Yeah, there's just so many good ones. I mean, someone like Francis Xavier too. I mean, he just like went off and best friends of Saint Ignatius, but they're almost like coming from these like rival families in Spain, but they became these best friends. And he had like Xavier had all these aspirations, kind of do like work in the schools, but Ignatius came to him and was like, "Listen, we need you to go to China to like spread the faith to the Far East. Like, no, they haven't heard of Jesus Christ." And so he just left, knowing he would never see his friend again. And so he headed off, and they shared letters. They wrote letters back and forth, and took like years for the actual correspondence to actually happen.
Wow!
But it is still to this day. Like, apparently, like Francis wrote, and like he was saying he was baptizing like thousands of people every day. And apparently, like we still have like the relic of Saint Francis's right arm because of just like how many people he would have baptized with his hand.
Wow.
And he almost got in to see the Emperor of China. He was like a couple of like miles short, and like he died.
Dang.
And so just that whole sense of, again, like going to the furthest extremes of the world to like, because of this belief, this zeal, this like desire to share this companionship of Jesus to all people everywhere, and then a true care for humanity, but also like see the world, spread it to the far corners, let nothing be a barrier to that.
Yeah.
And then maybe if I have a third, it's like these, I have to kind of combine, it's called like the North American martyrs, especially these two, Saint Jean de Brebeuf and Isaac Jogues, these two French Jesuits who ended up coming to upstate New York and kind of the East Coast of the United States, and again, like the late early 1600s, and were met with like all these native peoples, and again, kind of for this evangelization purpose, to spread Jesus Christ to the far corners of the world, to like share like the goodness of the spiritual exercises and discernment and making the best better, as it was like kind of still driving me today. But Brebeuf and Isaac Jogues, like they got there in like the coldest, the cold northern winter. They're up in like the Georgian Bay and like the St. Lawrence Seaway kind of thing, and like they were canoeing up through this like in the ice cold and freezing temperatures. And they met these people and they started setting up these like missionary territory, like in upstate like New York and then into Canada. And so these missionaries, like exploring all these country, or like this part of the country, doing these maps, learning the language. But then it was like they got into this like kind of rivalry between the Huron people, who they were working with, who they were like developing all these like farming techniques and like developing these communities with them. But then their rival was the Iroquois. And the Iroquois were a fierce people who pretty much did everything against what the Huron people did. And so like when they saw this Isaac Jogues and Brebeuf like meeting and working with the Huron, they took it as their purpose, like vendetta to get to those guys. And I mean, there's all these different like possibilities of like being caught by them. Eventually, Isaac Jogues was caught in prison, and the Iroquois saw something when Isaac Jogues would celebrate Mass. It was like the importance of holding the Eucharist with his two fingers. Well, they actually took a tomahawk axe and like chopped his two fingers off.
Whoa!
As part of it, like Isaac Jogues like survived, and everybody thought back in France, where he'd come from, that he had died. And so they actually had funerals for him. But then he survived, comes back, and he had to get special dispensation to celebrate Mass without his two fingers, because there's like this whole thing: you have to hold the Eucharist with your two fingers. And so like because he didn't have those, he like got special dispensation to like celebrate like with his other fingers. And so he survived. He got back. His mother thought he had died, but he like is knocking on his mother's door, like, "Hey, I'm back. I'm home." It's like, "I thought you died." Well, he was so imbibed with this mission of like spreading the life of Jesus Christ back to the people of North America, that after like had parades of celebrating his survival and saying hello to his mom, he's like, "I got to go back to North America. I can't just leave my friends over there." And so he was back on a boat, back to New York. Within a couple of weeks, he ended up being tomahawked in the head and like martyred. Jean de Brebeuf too was martyred pretty significantly, and he was dragged for 13 miles behind a horse, and then like put up to this like night-long torture where they started like literally like flaying him alive. They put these like flaming tomahawks over his neck as like this kind of necklace, and then started like boiling him in this like boiling water. At the end, I mean, he survived almost like 12 hours of this. At the end, like the Iroquois, I don't know if the Indiana Jones kind of thing, they literally cut his heart out and like ate it in front of him.
Whoa!
Because they were so impressed with the courage that he like showed and like the strength that he had.
That's insane.
So it's like, again, like just these Jesuits who have lived this life and like from like this amazing and very smart Edmund Campion to the early Francis Xavier to then Jean de Brebeuf, Isaac Jogues, and companions.
It's like just the strength of their faith and how far it took them.
That's right. And is it just an idea? Is it just like a nice feeling, or is there something deeper here?
Like there has to be.
Yes.
I definitely think so.
So that continues to inspire me to this day.
Yeah, no, I get it.
Big footsteps, you know. It's like, as they say, like standing on the shoulder of great giants or holy men.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a good that's like your dream team, right?
Exactly. Yes.
What would you say? So there's several movies out there that kind of are inspired by like Christianity / the resurrection. Which ones would you say is your favorite? So I have like as examples, Narnia, Lord of the Rings, and Star Wars.
Okay.
So which ones would you kind of say?
I mean, Lord of the Rings is, and Narnia. I mean, both C.S. Lewis and J.R. Tolkien were very good friends. And when I had this chance to study at Oxford, I could go to their pub. They called the Eagle and Child, where they always would get together and talk about these stories.
That's cool.
Which is right in the main drag in Oxford. And so, like, to this day, there's still like a booth set up where they would always share these stories. Yeah. And so they would actually share about how we can talk about Jesus Christ in these different kind of science fiction kind of or fictional stories of sorts, or depict it in like ways that would be more attractive to people in different ways. And so C.S. Lewis would always get criticized by J.R. Tolkien because like he was like too obvious and like, oh, come on, Aslan is of course Jesus Christ. He's like going to die and things. But Tolkien was much more of a imagination guy, and he was actually more of a linguist. And so Tolkien would actually develop like the whole like Elvish language and like the and like also like the what are the trolls or like the Gollum kind of figures and
the orcs.
Yes, the orcs. Thank you. And then the Hobbitville and all the Hobbit kind of. So like he developed like all these different languages, and then it was like, well, I could have made up all these people and languages. I guess I should write a story about how it all came to be. And so it's more like the languages that came first and the story that came after.
That's crazy.
And apparently I've heard that he was much more of like he didn't have like the whole story mapped out ahead of time. He was just like, well, let's see where I'm starting it, and we'll see where it goes. Yeah. And apparently he like when Frodo and Samwise got like stuck in like the marshes for a while, like, apparently Tolkien was just like, well, I guess that's the end of the story. I kind of wrote myself into a wall here. And then he's like, well, I can't just end it here. So then he was kind of able to get him out of there. But this whole story, I mean, I very much get into Lord of the Rings and how that is a story of like good versus evil, light over darkness, but also like the temptations that we must face, and kind of that clutching onto these like that precious that can like overcome us and take us over. So how can we be freed from these inordinate attachments and disordered desires? Yeah. So those are good ones, obviously. Yeah, really. And I grew up watching the original Star Wars. All these like prequels, sequels, like I don't even keep track of all of them. So I was the original 3 kind of guy. Yeah. But even that, it's interesting though. I mean, talk about where some of that inspiration came from. I mean, they had the whole idea of like the Jedi Knights and how they would wear these like black robes. Well, it's not too far off some of the inspiration of like the Jesuit black robes. Yeah. And so using the Force. So what's his name who wrote the whole George Lucas? Yeah, George Lucas. I mean, like that he may have had some inspiration from some of this like the Jesuit missionaries and how they like developed this force of the spiritual exercises. And we would wear these like black cassocks and like would go in kind of and teach these kind of lessons of spiritual exercises with the Force too. And so obviously he took it off but this, I mean, the whole idea of like, may the Force be with you, it's like, like the Catholic Church to this day, we begin Mass, may the Lord be with you. Yeah. And so it's like these little kind of like tweaks from the Christian idea. And obviously it's like kind of this like the golden legend of like this one who is sacrificed on behalf of the people for the sake of like the strength of the alliance of sorts. Yeah. And so it's like this perennial story that captivates humanity. It's kind of told over and over again, but it's really like the story of the passion, death, and resurrection of Jesus Christ, and like the manifestation of that in this evil, sinful world that it's like of a dark power that seeks to take over.
Yeah.
And so why that like has been used kind of over and over and can continue to sell in Hollywood over and over. It's like we just want to see that story so much.
Yeah. I think it's crazy because there's a lot of movies that really have like a kind of like a resurrection and then somebody coming out as being like a hero.
So.
It's
I mean,
really
Matrix,
crazy.
Again,
The Matrix, yeah. And I remember watching the Lego movie for the first time and looking at Emmett, and I'm like, and like by the end of the movie, I'm like, whoa, that was almost like the Bible.
Very much so.
It's like almost like the New Testament for some reason. I don't know if that was like on purpose, but I remember looking at it like this reminds me of the Matrix. Wait, the Matrix reminded me of Jesus.
Right.
That's crazy.
Well, and with things like Neo and Trinity and some even the names that they use.
Yeah, the Trinity. Yeah.
So it's like there's these little hints and references.
Yeah, it's definitely something. So I might skip that one, but I do want to ask a few of these questions. I'm not sure if you've heard of some of these though. So have you heard of like a few years ago? I'm not sure when it was, but there was a huge like satanic parade in Brazil. Did you hear about that one?
I don't know about Brazil, but then even just like 1 year ago, there's like this massive Satan convention in Boston.
Oh yeah.
And so yeah, I mean these movements are happening.
Yeah. So with that parade that was in Brazil, they had like floats and everything, and they were like mocking Jesus and all of that. And I think like a few weeks later, there was just like this huge flood, and there was like the damage was insane and all of that. And so everybody's saying like that's what happens when you mock God in front of the world, and because there was thousands and thousands of people there that were just like going along with it. And I just think like that's also something,
Yes, I mean, we cannot deny the power of evil in this world and these dark forces. And so, I mean, I just, like, whoever's watching here is like, but, I mean, I caution anybody from, like, playing with Ouija boards.
Oh, yeah,
or,
me too.
like, tarot cards, or kind of opening these portals, or kind of tempting fate in a sense, or kind of challenging, like, that, or even having inquiry or curiosity about these dark forces, because they're present and they're there and they're very real. And if we think they're not, I guess what is that line in Batman? It's like the greatest trick the devil ever pulled was to show that he never existed.
Yeah, I heard you say that in class a few days ago. I was like,
true.
Whoa.
So it's I mean, and if we try to tap into some of these things, it's like there will be consequences, as are there consequences of tapping into the good. And so it's like there's the both end. But to have like these, I mean, I was actually just over spring break, I was seeing some friends and giving these talks down in New Orleans, and you can go into kind of like this French Quarter and these other districts and things.
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot of like voodoo and like the power of voodoo, and if I kind of like
no voodoo, I would say voodoo's real.
Oh sure.
Yeah.
But in some ways,
scary.
It's very. Like there's a lot of Christian aspect to it, and the idea of like these different kind of like patron saints, but how they kind of like twist it into like these other almost satanic or like other cultish kind of practices. Where they take the Blessed Mother or these other saints and they use those as a way against it. Now, just a lot of different things. Like I mean, the very term like the black magic of sorts. It even comes up in C.S. Lewis, but
it does.
Yeah, but it's like even black magic and other things. It's like the term hocus pocus is rooted and grounded in the centrality of Christianity, because the Latin Mass, at the very time when the Eucharist is consecrated, the phrase is hoc est corpus meum, or take and eat, this is my body. Well, you blend that together real fast, hoc est corpus meum, it's like hocus pocus.
Yeah.
It's all just a bunch of hocus pocus that they're doing there.
That's crazy.
And so the idea that like a lot of these dark forces kind of take the teachings and the practices, the liturgy, and the holiness of Christianity and pervert it and corrupt it into these dark forces. And one of the big things that can come up at these Satan conventions is they try to get a consecrated host of the Eucharist, which is the most sacred thing for Catholics and Christians, and they have what's known as a black mass, where they take this consecrated host and like basically desecrate it, and they're like these rituals that they do.
Yeah.
So it's evil. It's dark.
Yeah.
And to play with this or to attempt this, and like I guess I don't know if you've gotten into movies that we talk about movies like The Exorcism or any of these kind of like exorcist movies. It's like they're super scary, but they're very real. And like in every diocese, like Roman Catholic diocese, there's a priest of the diocese that is designated as the exorcist. And I've heard from friends, or even I know some exorcists, it's like they're very busy.
That
it's
so
kind of,
crazy.
It's like Ghostbusters, but for real. Or like you call 911, or you call the Exorcist. Like they're getting like calls daily, because it's like this is such a like, and things start happening that you don't want to mess with. But on the other hand, there is the power of good, and like there is Jesus Christ.
Is there an exorcist on campus or in this area?
There is in the Archdiocese of Omaha.
Wow.
Yeah, so he lives in Omaha, and he goes from parish to parish, house to house.
Wow.
Doing, like when there's a call there in need.
That's crazy. My friend, so I think it was a few years ago, we were celebrating New Year's, right? So we were over there until like 12, and then I think we left around 1-ish. After me and my family left, my friend and his family were cleaning up, like putting everything away. They were about to go to bed. And at their front door, they hear 3 loud knocks. And obviously they thought that like we forgot something, we were coming back. But they looked through the window, there was no one there. And so they started freaking out. And I guess they called their uncle, or my friend's uncle, who is like a priest. I don't think it was his uncle. I want to say it's his grandfather. But he's a priest, and he basically just blessed the house. I don't know if they had like holy water or whatever, but he was just saying like, yeah, there definitely could have been something that like latched onto the house, and they were just trying to make sure it was safe. So,
yeah.
Isn't that like a crazy story?
It is, but I think why our culture is somewhat obsessed with these kind of aspects, or going back to things like Ghostbusters or some of these exorcist stories, but all these things like the zombies taking over, zombie apocalypse, and like more and more, like all these movies are like every year there's a whole handful of movies that are like this kind of horror or like some kind of demonic or spiritual possession kind of thing. And why are we as a culture so obsessed with this? And some of my students who are in the fall semester, when it comes to like Halloween, it's like people just love putting like dead things all over their yard and like hanging skeletons and like what? Why are we so obsessed with this as a culture? Now, John Paul II, the Pope of the a couple of years ago, who died in like around 2005, no, even earlier, 2001, I think. He actually wrote about the sense of like we're moving as a world into a culture of death, and what does that mean? What are the consequences? What are the implications of that? But that we can't deny that it's like there's something that intrigues us about like this otherworldly thing, and there's like these different powers, and that especially these dark forces that can possess us, scare us, do different things to us, to humanity. Like why? There are spiritual dimensions here.
I definitely agree. Are you familiar with the testimony of John Ramirez?
I don't think so.
Okay. So I would definitely recommend you checking it out because it is so crazy. Huh. He was a former Satanist, and he was deep in the church. He was, I think he was in charge of like whatever church in like New York. I want to say one of the neighborhoods in New York, and he would say that like he would cast spells on people and all of this stuff. Like his father was a warlock before him, and his wife, like he had a demonic marriage where like there was no people that wanted to show up. They were too scared. So they just had demons and witches. And so, no, it was crazy. He was explaining how he would like tell a person. He would get, like, someone would tell him they want this person to like die or get sick, and he would like say, he would like cast spells and say, oh, whatever person's gonna die in 20 days. And then once he says that, it happens, like every single time. But he would explain that, like, whenever there was a Christian, or the first time he had to do it to a Christian, he's like, oh, I'll do it for free. Because every other time it'd be like, oh, 10,000, I'll do it for 10,000, I'll do it for 5,000. But when it's a Christian, he wants to do it for free because he wants to teach the Christians, right? But when the first time he did it, he tried to do it to a Christian, it didn't work. And he tried to, like, talk to Satan, like, and the demons, and they were like, the God this person serves, you can't touch them. Because their faith is just too strong. You can't do anything. And he kept trying. He would do everything he could. He said he, like, maximized his power. He was trying to do it so, like, that person would die in, like, 2 days. And no matter what he did, it didn't work. And
It's the power of faith.
Eventually, yeah, exactly. Eventually, I think he went on, like, a sabbatical. Like, he stopped doing his practices and whatever for 1 year, and he told Satan, give me 1 year, I'm just going to take a break or whatever. I think he goes into way more detail about, like, why he decided to do it in his testimony, but he says that, like, for that 1 year, he went completely blind. And doctors everywhere, they couldn't explain it, why it happened. And I guess Satan was just like, yeah, I'm going to take your eyes. And so his eyes literally went cloudy, and he couldn't see anything. And then, like, his mom was saying, like, he said, you can ask my mom, like, it actually happened. And I find that insane. That's so crazy. Because it came back, and then soon afterwards, he has this dream of him going through on a train, and the train's, like, really hot, and there's, like, people around, and he gets off the train, and there's just, like, flames everywhere, and there's a gate to hell. And the devil's like, don't turn around, you're coming with me, and, like, all this stuff, like, he's gonna go to hell, right? But right before he like enters the gate, he sees, like, a huge cross, and it's, like, lit up, and I guess, like, at that moment, Christ saves him, and he asks Christ, like, why didn't you do it any sooner? Like, I clearly wasn't anywhere near you, like all of this, you know what I mean? Because he was clearly, like, so far gone that, but I guess Jesus just says, you know, I wanted to see how much you love me. So I guess now he's given into, like, following God and preaching the gospel and showing how real these, like, spiritual powers are. Because many people don't think that they're real, but he can, like, literally he was going through, like, shops in New York and showing the people that were doing the documentary, he was showing, like, oh, don't buy this is a demon right here. Like, this holds a demon, this is an idol. And then he'll point out, like, some graffiti, like, this demon is in charge of this demon's in charge of Haiti, this demon's in charge of this place, this demon's in charge of Miami. And it's like, wow, how is that? Like, we live in this world. That's so crazy.
Yeah, and we can't be oblivious to these forces and these powers.
Because they're definitely real.
Oh yeah, but so are the powers of goodness.
That's one of the things he was explaining, because he explains that when you believe in Satan and you follow him, you will see like almost instantly. It's so much. He explains that, but the problem is, the second you do anything wrong, the second you slip up, he'll take someone away. He'll make you sick. He'll kill you, and
This is
it'll happen
for perfectionism.
Yes,
And
but if you follow
form.
God, He's forgiving, He's merciful,
That's right.
and He'll always protect you. It's not like that on the other side. So although you may not always see like the spiritual forces working for you, he is protecting you. Like he actually is protecting you.
And to be able to grow despite the mistakes that we make.
Yeah.
There's a wonderful book by C.S. Lewis called The Screwtape Letters that also explores this kind of idea. And C.S. Lewis takes the perspective of these demons and is trying to corrupt this particular, they call it the patient that they're working on, this one particular guy. But it's all through the perspective of like these demons trying to corrupt a soul. And C.S. Lewis got so into the mind of kind of these demonic forces that like they asked him like, well, this is so good, so popular, can you keep writing books like this? And he's like, I just can't. I can't.
Yeah.
It's like, I just got into the mind of Satan. I can't do this.
Yeah, that's dangerous.
It is.
That's really dangerous.
But it's a fascinating book. I mean, I definitely recommend reading this because like you recognize just how subtle the evil forces can be, and they can start to weasel away even good intentions, and slowly start to slip into this kind of whole track into kind of like these satanic kind of ways or mindsets.
Yeah. And I think like you were saying, like our society has such like a deep fascination with like death and evil, and like it's even on like the music that we listen to, the media that we consume, and it's like even like sometimes our environment, like if we choose to put ourselves there, then we're kind of like advocating for whatever's going on. And it's the same with like the music, like it's entering through our ears. That's how like demons get in and all this stuff. So you got to make sure that you're protecting yourself by not like consuming that kind of content.
And that's your choice. Yeah, it's like what you choose to listen to, watch, engage in, the activities, I don't know, even what you eat. I think it's like, as I said, going back to body, mind, and soul.
Yeah.
Like everything matters. There's also a lot of science being done with like what's called near-death experiences, and where people, whether they're having like heart surgery or they have a heart attack or different kind of illnesses that put you into like a persistent vegetative state, but that like apparently millions of people have these on like every year, and they come back. They start the heart up again or whatever. They recover from their illness, and they come back there with these profound experiences, and not just dreams, because like you can actually do like scientific investigation or evidence-based research on what they experienced. For example, like they have like people who are going into like heart surgery or like heart transplant. It's like clinically they will be dead for like these 25 minutes as the doctor like takes their heart out, puts a new one in, or does this like invasive procedure of like stopping the heart. And like, there's certain surgeries. It's like you will be clinically dead, and then we're going to revive you and bring you back. So it's like they do these different like tests then, where it's like if a body is like laying flat on their back, looking up at a ceiling, they have like a few rooms over. They put like I don't know some like big like rubber chicken or like inflatable like monsters, like just kind of random like object out in some other room, and because like people have talked about, they start hovering. They have an out of body experience.
Like astral projection.
Yeah. Yeah. And they can see like what the doctors are doing, hear all the things in the room, and then they can confirm like what kind of conversations are. And then it's like, what was that big rubber chicken doing over the 2 rooms over? It's like, you saw that? You know this? Like, yeah, I was flying right over it.
That's so crazy.
And it's like confirmed and verifiable evidence, like over and over and over again. And then there's these people who kind of move into these like more than just like hovering over their body. They start to have like kind of these life sequence events, or they meet other people. And so like these children especially have like met like their grandparents or things who have died, and even like that grandparents or great grandparents who like they never even met in their own lifetime, but they can come back and start confirming with people who did know them all these like actual evidence about their life.
Oh my gosh, those are the stories that get me like confused.
Oh my gosh. And then there's like the most powerful is when like people who have been blind from birth, where it's like a lot of people can, like even psychologists or say kind of question these things away, saying like it's just like your mind kind of going into its death sequence and kind of replaying all these old memories or something, and it's like it's all not. It's like it's just the brain is dying. But here it's like blind people have these near-death experiences, and like people blind from birth, so they've never seen anything in their life, so they have no images to go on. Like you ask them like, what is the color green? It's like, I don't know what you mean. And so, but they have these near-death experiences too, and they come back and it's like, I was hovering over, I saw these like trains, I saw the green for the first time in my life.
Wow.
And so it's like, I mean, so, and they're talking and describing visions that when they come back to their body and they're blind again, it's like, but I know what I saw. It's like,
wow.
And so
that's mind blowing.
And then there's like, so from all of that, they have these original experiences of sorts, but then they move, some can start to move into these like moving toward this place of brightness, hope, joy, immense peace, calmness, and that it's just like it's so unbelievably good that they just like want to stay. It's just like see all this love that I'm feeling. And then there's the negative, and they're actually like these negative near-death experiences, or that where it's like people literally talking about being like eaten alive by demons, or being pulled into this like boiling sulfur, or whatever, and like smelling all these kind of like these traps and darkness, and so it's like people come back with like very positive or sometimes very negative, and it like drastically transforms their life.
That's so crazy.
Yeah, and so it's just like what we do here in this life, it matters. What we say and like live out, and the practices that we do, and like the prayers that we say, or what we choose to follow, it matters.
Thoughts matter.
Yes, exactly. So that's why I keep pushing that.
Wow. Yeah. No, that's wow.
So yeah, in some ways, like I think we're so intrigued as a society because it's like we know this exists. In some ways, like we almost want to deny it, or just think it's a nice fiction.
Yeah.
But that's like we're so intrigued, and it's so like perennial in our society, and our movies, and our what we seek out, that it's like actually it's so real.
Yeah. Part of me is like I see it as like pushing boundaries, and I also see it as like it's also like the devil's work. Like that's what he wants.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's what he would like. If I forgot, there's like this very. So once I'm done with this podcast, I'm probably going to send you a few links of videos you should definitely check out. But there's this speech by this.
Some of these satanic one. I don't want to watch this stuff.
Yeah. No, this guy goes into I forgot what it's called. I gotta like look it up or whatever. But he's just talking about like, I know I showed it to Miguel. He's like, if I were the devil, and then he explains, I would do this in the media, I would do this, I would do this, I would do this to the food system, do this to like how families are set up, do this to like how the educational system is set up, and basically do this with government, do this with that, do this with that, do this to the world. And then, so basically, if I were the devil, I'd just be doing exactly what I'm doing now. That's how the video ends. And you're just left like with goosebumps, just because this speech was given in like the 1960s or like 1970s, and basically everything he predicts comes almost exactly true.
Yeah. So that's where are there societies of Jesus? You know, are there forces of goodness? Are there angels among us? I think too, if you hear stories of these intercessors or angels, there's people have those too, though. I suppose just to say ones. My uncle is like he's had diabetes most of his life, and he's recently had like these infections with his feet. He's not a religious man, like, and I think he'd admit that himself. Like, and that but he just told my parents the story. They were visiting him and trying to care for him, but he had to have part of his foot amputated. And like apparently he was talking about like his pain was just excruciating. Like he was like almost blacking out. It was so intense, and like missing his toes and things. It was like just shooting pain, like rippling up and down like his legs. But he talked about like he kind of woke up and like it was clear as day. These two like kind of bright light men were standing there and sort of like wrapping up and like treating his foot, and it was like, and he talks about this, and then he like the pain was gone, and like and then they just kind of like went away,
What?
and it was just like, and like he is not like he hasn't gone to church.
Yeah.
It was like these angels, I have not had this pain ever since, and it was just
Wow.
like, and so it's just like there it was, and like he just got to the point, it's like, oh God, I can't handle this pain, and it was pretty soon these angels are like ministering to his feet. And there's over and over these different stories of people like pilots that have been flying and like they have to do an emergency landing and they like get this whole radio signal and like this guy's guiding them into this this small airport, and they land and they realize like nobody's been at this airport for like 40 years. It's just like, how did we get here?
Yeah.
Or over and over like things happen where like, there's these good intercessors as well, and who are trying to build humanity up for the best of us and care for us.
Of course. Building onto that, have you heard of the Loretta staircase?
Yes.
Do you know the story? Because I'm a little foggy. I haven't heard it in a little while, so I know a little bit, but
isn't this down like in Arizona area or the?
I'm not sure.
if it's the one I've thought of, it's like there was this church that like either had some storm or something, but they had to like develop. I mean, they had this like choir loft or balcony.
Yeah, I think it's.
And then like they like somehow either how it happened, it broke, or like somehow a storm. And so it was like it was very poor, but they had like developed this like staircase to get to this balcony. And like this guy just showed up, built this like beautiful staircase, and like didn't want any payment, and then just disappeared. And then like architects are now studying this thing. It's like, who was this? And all he left was like, my name is Joe or something. And like, St. Joseph came and built this staircase.
Yeah, because it wasn't St. Joseph carpenter.
Exactly.
So a lot of people think it was him, and there's also the thing that they have done analysis on like the staircase. There's no nails. There's nothing that's holding it together. There's not even like a support beam in the middle. It's kind of just like floating, kind of. And the other thing is they were looking at like the wood that the guy used, and it doesn't exist anywhere in the world, which is
cool.
So crazy.
It was gonna be, and like I was touring this other convent, so there's like these old sisters. Actually, this is in Milwaukee. There's this beautiful, beautiful church there, and I mean they're just showing me around this church. It's like, oh, here's the altar, Father, and here's kind of where we keep some of the relics. And then they took me back to this choir loft, and it was like, here's the staircase. St. Joseph came and built this. And it was like matter of fact. It was just like.
So you were there. You were actually there.
This was a different. This isn't the Loretta one.
Oh, okay.
I mean, but in the same way, like, oh yeah, St. Joseph came and built this, but we didn't have any money for this. And he just built this. Like, so I don't know if it's quite as miraculous as this one, but it's like they were like convinced. It's like, and just like matter of fact.
Yeah, that's so. Because everything's like interconnected.
Very much so. I'm going to show this video coming up, and like I know previous students have showed this, but it was like there's this whole relic called the Shroud of Turin that
is that the
burial cloth?
Yeah, I've seen it.
And like you've seen it.
No, I have not in person.
You know of it.
I know of it.
So I mean, there's been a lot of scientific work done on this, and so as you were talking about the Stairs of Loretto, like in some ways, there's this image on this like rough kind of sackcloth of a piece of fabric, but like there's this image that's kind of floating on it. That's this image of this dead, crucified man that goes back 2,000 years. But all these physicists and all these scientists are kind of continually analyzing it. Now with all this like these scanning images that we can kind of get now, they cannot fathom how this image was actually produced.
Yeah.
And actually the detail that this image has is, so again, this kind of thing, it's like, is this a relic of the resurrection itself?
Yeah.
Because it's like, there's even if we in this modern day were to try to recreate this in a forgery of some kind, it's like, at this point, we don't even have like the lasers that could like create this kind of image of that we're seeing on this like 2,000-year-old non-photographic cloth now. And so it's like, even if this is a forgery of some kind, or somebody like kind of did this like that isn't, it's like, even if we wanted to forge it now, we couldn't do it.
That is so crazy.
But it's an image, and we cannot deny it.
Yeah. That is so wild.
And it like there's blood. I mean, it was there is blood actually on it. They've actually tested the like they've taken out of the material, tested it is real DNA with real hemoglobin and all this kind of stuff. And then it like and they know it's like it's an AB positive, it's like the universal type, which then is matching. There's been all these like Eucharistic miracles around the world, and it's the same blood type that continually shows up in all these years.
What? Wow.
So all this kind of different.
I didn't know that part.
Yeah.
Wow, that's crazy.
So there's some cool stuff as opposed to all this like
Scary.
demonic stuff.
Yeah,
it's like,
yeah.
There is this power of good, and it's like it's up to our choices. That who are we following?
Yeah.
What do we see as real?
Okay. I've got one more story, and then I've got a few more questions, and then hopefully we can wrap this up. All right. So this story was, I'm trying to remember. So my friend's dad, when he was growing up, I guess he was kind of like, I don't know. I think he didn't really get along with his parents very well. This is the same friend, by the way. This is his father. And he wanted to go hang out with like his friends at like his friend's house, and because I guess that was like the spot where they all hang out. And when he got there, I guess his sister had come down. I'm pretty sure it was his sister. It could have been someone else, but his sister, their like babysitter, whoever it was, came down because I guess all of them were upstairs, and she was like, "Oh, your friends? They're upstairs. They're playing with a Ouija board. I wouldn't recommend going upstairs. You probably shouldn't do that, right?" And so, my friend's dad was like, "Oh, okay. Yeah, no, I don't really want to do that." So I guess he went back home and then stayed at home. And then the next day, when he saw his friends, they were talking about it. And then when he saw that girl at school, he asked her like, Why'd you tell me to go? Why'd you tell me to leave?" Right? And she was like, "I didn't tell you to leave. What are you talking about?" So I guess what he got from that was that God will protect you from evil like that. You know what I mean? So he doesn't want you to like engage in that. And so God had sent her, even if she like she doesn't remember it, to tell him to leave and not stay in that area where they were engaging in that kind of like,
guardian angels.
Yeah, exactly. That's like what you were talking about.
They exist.
Yeah.
And protect us.
Okay. Yeah. So, moving on from like this kind of like religious conversation, I wanted to ask you a few things because I saw on like your Creighton bio. I know you have like a Creighton bio.
Mm-hmm.
I think like all professors have one. My friend had pointed it out when I said that I was getting you on. He was like, "What, dude? This Jesuit you're interviewing has like a long list. He's done everything." So I wanted to ask, like, what got you into running and doing like triathlons?
Oh yeah. Basically, when I went to, this is going back to the beginning, when I went to Boston College, and not getting into like a tennis scholarship or kind of other varsity sports. Boston is, as you know, is the home of the Boston Marathon.
Yeah.
It's actually going to be run this coming Monday. It's Patriots Day out in Boston, so it's a favorite time of the year for me. But basically, I got there, it's like, wow, I want to stay in shape, and if this is a neat opportunity, so I don't want to let this marathon run me by. So I got to college and got into more and more long distance running. And so I was able to do the Boston each of the 4 years that I was out there for undergrad, and then I've gone back a couple of years since. And then, like, even as I was doing like marathon training, marathon running, I would always get into like a lot of cross training. I guess I like the diversity. I like mixing things up. Like, in some ways, I'll need my knees longer, so I like biking. I like swimming, anyways. And so, yeah, I got into more and more triathlons too. And so it was a way to stay in shape, but it was also just I like the diversity. In some ways, after doing triathlons, in some ways I feel a lot better than just doing like a long run or something like mixing it up in the diversity.
Is it like the water and like it doesn't, I don't know. because I've never done a triathlon. I have friends that have, actually, surprisingly. I have a lot of friends that like compete nationally back home. But what was I gonna say? Oh, like the mental capacity, like what do you call that? Mental strength you have to go through like a marathon, and then also to go through like a triathlon's got to be crazy. I think it's got to be very comparing like a marathon to like a triathlon. It's got to be like marathon's probably more boring. I don't know how to say it, but it's probably like
you got to keep that attention or kind of or find that
like
that happy place and kind of like zone out.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't get caught up in like how many miles to go. It's more like how far have you come, and just like keeping the rhythm steady.
Yeah.
And I mean, the triathlons certainly have their challenges. It's like, I mean, you're finishing on especially longer and longer triathlons, but it's like after biking for a couple hours and like you have to get off this bike now and start running a pretty long race. Then.
What's the distance for each one?
Well, it depends. So like there's different lengths of triathlons. There's as soon as like the sprints, which is, I mean, those are very short. It's like you swim like 750 yards, then you bike a 10K and you run a 5K or something.
Okay.
Then there's like the Olympic, and it all goes by kilometers. So you swim a kilometer, you bike 50 kilometers, and you run a 10K. But then you get into like the half Ironman. So that's like you bike a mile and a half, swim. Swim a mile and a half, bike 56, and then run a half marathon.
Oh, whoa!
And then the full marathon, or full Ironman, is like you swim like 2.5 miles, you bike 112, and then you run a full marathon. That's
actually like a lot of biking.
Oh, it's a long way.
That's a lot.
Even if you're super fast, I mean, you're averaging like 20 to 25 miles an hour. You're still on the bike for over 4 hours.
Yeah.
But at that point, it's like you almost have to have, and people pay thousands of dollars for good bikes.
Yeah.
Because in some ways, it's all mechanical advantage at that point. I mean, you're going to be on the bike for the longest part of that whole race, and it's like every pedal stroke can make a huge difference.
That makes sense.
A super efficient bike.
Yeah.
So they develop these like amazing triathlon bikes. I don't have one of those.
Yeah.
I have a decent kind of road bike, but it's like if you really got into it and you really want to win these things, it's like it's all mechanical advantage. The funny thing, my forte is more the run, and so like all these people are passing me on their super fast bikes.
Yeah.
Like, I'll see you later. I'll catch you on the run.
No, I get that.
Mano a mano, like feet on feet.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, no, I ran cross country.
Yeah, okay.
And so
you gotta
and then
familiar with that.
Like going into like the wrestling season, because I also wrestled. Whenever like our coach did punishments and whatever, and it was running, I was like, yes, finally. Everybody else was like, oh man.
That's when you come out and shine.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so now I definitely understand what you mean by like getting off the bike and then start like running, and now you feel good.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
You gotta know your forte.
Yeah. So my last question on this list is, what would you say is like your most memorable race, and like what happened?
Wow. There's been a couple. I mean, so I've done. I mean, some of my favorite races. I mean, like to run the Boston Marathon is just a privilege in itself.
Yeah.
It's such a classic course, and there's all these different points along the course that are just like famous. I mean, there's like this echo chamber around this like Wellesley School. That's mile 13. And the Heartbreak Hill, of course, and that like it goes from mile 16 up to mile 21. It's like a 5-mile gradual hill. And the top of 21 is where Boston College is, where I was going. So like all my friends would be way on the top of this hill.
Yeah.
Like,
oh, that must have been really cool.
It was a lot of fun. And then though, it's like you still after mile 21, you still have 5 miles you have to go to actually finish this race. And you're getting closer and closer to downtown. And you run by Boston University, which is kind of the rival of Boston College, and I would usually wear like a BC shirt, and like all these BU students, all the Boston University students were like, oh, BC sucks, you're never gonna make
Yeah.
it. And then like people would be passing out like vodka rather than water. And so it was like, but some of my most memorable, or I did like the London Marathon, and like
Oh, really?
finished under the Big Ben.
Wow.
And like running across all these like the classic London Bridge and kind of
That's
things.
cool.
It's like, I did the Washington D.C. Marine Corps Marathon, and so it's like running around all the monuments and up and down the Potomac River.
Yeah.
And it was just a beautiful day that day too. But really, I guess one of my most memorable was I was in the first year in the novitiate in St. Paul, and I had wanted to keep running marathons, and my novice master, I may have told this story in class some. My novice master just had a pretty big brain tumor removed, and like his doctor said he'd be lucky if he could walk again. Well, he wanted to prove that doctor wrong, and so he really started working hard, like physical therapy kind of stuff, and like developing his balance again. And so I came in the novitiate right about when he was trying to get his balance back, and I asked, like, could I run this St. Paul Twin Cities Marathon when I'm here in the novitiate? He's like, yes, but you're going to help me do it too. I'm like, you're going to run this together? I was like,
Wow.
okay.
Really?
So he was like 10 to 15 years older than I was, for almost 20. But he's like, all right, we're going to train together, and we're going to do this. And so it got to race day, and he was getting ready, and like he was going to do this. But he was like, listen, I want you to run your best marathon. And then our novitiate, or the building that we were on, was actually right at mile 21 of the marathon course. And so the plan was that I was going to run the entire marathon, finish. A different guy was going to pick me up, bring me back to mile 21, and I would meet him, and then we'd finish again together.
Yeah.
And so that was my motivation. And it was like this beautiful day. And the Twin Cities Marathon, they kind of proclaimed themselves as the most beautiful urban marathon. It really is. It takes place in October in St. Paul, and so all the leaves are changing. It's got these beautiful colors, and the lakes are just gorgeous, and they're running up and down the Mississippi River and stuff. And so it's a beautiful marathon. I was feeling like top. I finished at one of my best marathon times, got back to mile 21. I was able to finish with my novice master, and we still have this picture together, like at the finish line with our hands up together.
That's amazing.
So it's truly a moment that is like, I don't know, I guess it's one thing to have kind of your own motivations, but when it's like for another person or for a connection, it was like, we're doing this together, and like after your brain tumor, it's like, I'll do anything to help you finish this marathon.
Wow. That must have felt really, really good.
Oh my gosh.
I can understand why that's probably your favorite.
Yeah.
So normally I like to end this podcast off with any advice you might have, whether it's like life, spiritual, or anything else that you got. So.
Well, I guess of all the lessons that kind of been subtly giving out, I think, and the theme of my book, if you ever read my book, is the idea that the power of the human person, or the force from Star Wars, is this real idea of like that we can be intentional about our actions and our decisions. And so how we spend our day, what we do with our life, how we prioritize our time, whether it be, and that it matters, I guess. And like are we fighting for good, or are we fighting for evil? Are we a part of the standard of Jesus Christ or the standard of Satan? And like how are we using our life in these few precious moments that we have? And to seek that fullness of life, but do it very intentionally. And so it's that I guess to do every day like a little bit more for like body, mind, soul, and also social, that connection with other people, and to care for other people in some way. Because is that the glory of God? Is that the being fully alive as a human being at the best we can be? Because there are, as we talked about a lot today, is like there's so many dark forces pulling us down, making us more individualistic, isolating from other people, causing us to do damage to the world, to ourselves, to one another. And so it's like to be the force of goodness in this world, and that happens intentionally through our choices and through our words, thoughts, and actions. But we need to be intentional about that. I want to do good here and now.
Yeah.
Which is what you're doing, Elijah. This is fantastic.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I definitely agree. Like, everything it's the intentionality of it all. You've got to make sure that you're doing the right thing and not giving into the evil. I know you always end class saying, do good and avoid evil. That's one of my favorite things about your class. Because it always sticks with me. I'm like, do good and avoid evil. It's like, it is something you slip in, and it's kind of like, I don't know if everybody ignores it, but I try to pay attention, you know. I hear it. And it's a good thing to live life by, because if you're giving in to evil, sometimes you still have that little bit of evil, you know.
Yeah, and it'll be that kind of that trickle effect or cascade where it's like, oh, a little bit here, it's like I can do a little bit more today and a little bit more tomorrow, and it's just like all of a sudden I don't know who is that guy? You're at the depths of Satan's door.
Oh,
like,
yeah, that was John Ramirez.
Yeah, so it's like as soon as obviously that's quite a slippery slope, but it's like, it's the little things that add up to the bigger things. And so
yeah.
Choose to do good and avoid evil.
I definitely agree. So I think this episode, I did like to sit back and listen to you talk because I wanted to learn a lot, but I definitely did. And I want to go through a quick summary of what we went over. Obviously, we started with you talking about like the podcast you've heard of, like other Jesuits being on, and Jordan Peterson, obviously, huge fan. Where you grew up, high school years, and then eventually going into the colleges you went to and deciding to become a Jesuit, and then choosing Creighton. And then eventually...
Or being chosen for me, that being sent on mission.
Yeah, I was going to say that, actually. Obedience, right?
That's right.
Yeah. And then eventually, you know, talking about, like, what's so good about Creighton, life at Creighton, and then, like, what you like about being a Jesuit. And then we talked about, like, Jesuits in the past, Jesuits you aspire to be like, and then we talked about like different movies, about like Resurrection, Narnia, Lord of the Rings, Star Wars, and then we talked about like the media, and then we talked about that parade, and then you gave some examples too that were pretty cool. We talked about lots of like the dark forces, you know, about like the demonic spirits, and then we switched to like the lighter side, like angelic kind of, like the people that come out and help, you know, stuff like that. And then we finished it off with running, triathlons, and then like those other hobbies that you have. So
covered the gamut, body, mind, soul. Yep. This conversation.
Yeah. So that's just a quick summary. I want to thank you for getting on. I definitely learned a lot. I hope that a lot of the people that are listening can learn a lot and definitely take some things away, apply them to their lives, live a better life, do good and avoid evil. So I want to thank you for getting on today.
Hey, amen. Thanks for this invitation.
Yeah. No problem.
Thank you guys for listening to this episode of the Goal Swell Podcast. If you guys enjoyed this episode, make sure to drop a like. And if you plan on listening to any future episodes, make sure to subscribe and click that notification button.